Welcome to Three, a part of the Tennis Channel podcast network. I'm Gill Gross with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy, and Novak Djokovic is through to yet another Wimbledon final where on Sunday he will play Carlos Alcaraz, gunning for his record-tying 8th Wimbledon title and his 24th major. He beats Jannik Sinner in straight sets in the semifinal. We are reacting just a couple of hours after that, and really just about 40 minutes after Alcaraz beat Medvedev, also in straight sets. This Jannik Sinner Novak match, Joel, did you expect it to be closer than it was?
Well, it's so interesting. Last year they played a 5-setter, but this year they played a 3-setter. But both players, Sinner in particular, said it felt closer. I thought Sinner would ask some questions, but I didn't think he'd have enough answers. I don't think Sinner is there yet. And it's interesting because we talk about Sinner and Alcaraz, we'll talk about where the respective games are at. I think Sinner is still very much a work in progress.
I thought John Millman had a really interesting tweet heading into the match where he said, basically, I've played all these guys and here it is in a nutshell. And he said about Sinner, he's the best or most amazing pure ball striker. He said about Medvedev, no free points. He said about Alcaraz, you give it to his forehand, see ya, bye, good night. And Djokovic, he said, it's like doing the butterfly drill over and over and over and over again. And I looked at that list really hard and I thought about it. And I was like, if I could be one person on this list, who would I want to be? And who wouldn't I want to be? And the person that I would not want to be is Sinner, because having your calling card being just you're a pure ball striker, that doesn't necessarily keep the ball in the court. That doesn't necessarily win you matches. And that doesn't necessarily speak to the grit or the wherewithal that it takes to come through. But the person that I did want to be was the butterfly drill person, Djokovic. And he had Sinner on the run from start to finish.
It's not exactly in fairness, it's not exactly going out on a limb, given the difference in achievement. Sinner, his first major semifinal. What I would say to the pure ball striking thing, and in regards to consistency, there's a lot of pure ball strikers who I do think are very consistent and keep the ball in the court. But Sinner is erratic. He is not, and I think it's because it's very one speed. Actually, I think there are a lot of reasons. I think part of it is his technique. I think part of it is that he wants to hit the ball 80 miles per hour plus on every forehand, regardless of what situation he's in. He goes for small targets. And I think the feature of Sinner's ball striking is his power. But I guess where I think we're maybe saying the same thing is, power does not keep the ball in the court. Power does not put the ball in the corner, does not put the ball close to the sideline. It's great, though. It is an asset. But I think the problem was that Jannik Sinner couldn't make a forehand under pressure.
That's right. And we were texting during the match. I mean, Novak, you could see he was kind of going at, he knew that was a safer harbor than the backhand. He just had to figure out how to get to it. John Millman, though, is kind of a funny set of comments. I mean, that's a very sensate player in the moment. I mean, once Sinner wins a slam, he won't be called that anymore. He'll just be called a great player. But in the meantime, when you're in your scent and haven't done things yet, you're kind of like ball striker. That's kind of a cousin of shot maker. It's one of those terms used to describe a player, and it's a compliment, but it's a compliment that's an unfulfilled. It has a compliment that speaks to potential more than yet what's been delivered. But I think Sinner's 21. I'm very excited to see what he's going to be playing like 3 years from now. But the package that he brought today, not quite enough. He's 22 of 29 at the net, but maybe per some other talks, maybe there needs to be some more approaches. And obviously there's some more shape on the forehands. I just saw you start with Hurkacz. Sinner has a better forehand than Hurkacz. But if you got some forehand technique issues, I mean, Novak, he's a dentist. He will find that cavity. And he will break down that forehand. He did it. He's a Craig O'Shaughnessy concept. He did it to Del Potro in the 18 US Open final. If you can break down Del Potro's forehand, that's pretty good.
Well, Novak's never afraid to go at these forehands also. I think if you told a lot of players, guys, that, okay, the game plan is we're going to hit to Sinner's forehand, they would go, are you nuts? He crushes the ball, right? Like that would be kind of the reaction.
I
But
go the backhand, but the backhand's even more is lethal.
it's not bigger though. It's not faster.
Well, this becomes
It's more solid. It's more solid, but it's not more dangerous. The thing is, I think Djokovic can go to the forehand, say, look, I'm not afraid of your big right hooks. I will absorb them. I will defend them, and you will miss. So I will go to the big, scary, but more erratic side because I'm not afraid of it. Where I think a lot of players will keep it on Jannik's backhand because they're afraid of the forehand.
Well, maybe 80 years from now, the study will prove that the two-handed backhand is meant to be the strong side all along. And the one-handed forehand is going to maybe go the way of the one-handed backhand. And a lot more players will be playing with two hands on both sides and, have these arsenals that'll be different. I mean, in a way, we see this with a lot of players. And Marin Cilic with the forehand, the forehand that can be mercurial.
It misses more. It misses more.
Yeah. Right. So the question, okay, where did I get hurt? Where did I dare him to hit winners? Where do I know he might miss? And that's what makes Novak, like you said, Amy, the butterfly, so good at deploying the court, managing the court.
Sinner said that he felt that this match was actually closer than last year, despite the score. And that kind of worries me because it was not a closer match. It was, because he definitely had some chances last year, but it was a match where a young player, I don't think, problem solved or tried to employ a different type of strategy. He just felt, as a lot of players do, including Daniil Medvedev, that I should be able to beat this guy with my game, or I should have a shot at this with my game, instead of, trying to problem solve.
I do think he got better.
Yeah, I think he's better than he was a year ago. I think last year he had the score lead, but once Novak, we talked about it, once Novak got that lead in the third set last year, he was pretty much in control. So Novak finished the fifth set of that match pretty easy, whereas today, he faced set points in the third set. So it's a difference. And again, Sinner is engaging. I call that tennis player logic. You always want to think it's better too. But I think it's sort of in some ways. Remember, Sinner had 2 break points in the opening game of the match. Had some other chance. So you're right. In other ways, it was like a vintage Novak, and yet he wasn't in it at all, it appears.
Total points won, 10-point difference for a straight sets, right? So I do think you can zoom in on the opportunities and the clutch points, and that's where the gap between Djokovic and Sinner was super, super decisive. And I think in the rest, in a lot of the other areas, in 15 all points, it wasn't quite as stark. And I also think that Sinner in the first set was definitely not coming to net as much as he was in the second and the third. I do think he made that improvement. But at the end of the day, like, you also need to be able to execute your bread and butter. Like, what are you good at, right? Sinner was going to beat Djokovic with his power, and the power needs to stay in the court or the power is no good.
Well, and Sinner, I think the nerves, first slam semi. I mean, Sinner, he's surely a better player than he was a year ago. So maybe that's what he means. Yeah. Maybe it means last year he carries the memories of kind of these strange first 2 sets, and then just being kind of beaten badly the last 3 sets. In this case, he felt, there I was, and I had 2 set points in the third set. And, and you have that logic that, and then anything could happen. I win that third set and all that stuff. Nonetheless, like you said, like we talk about all the time, Novak and this tiebreak, once again, now he's won 15 straight tiebreakers in majors this year. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's almost gotten to the point, I feel like we stopped counting. We're just like, a ton in a row. It was like, I didn't even hear it as emphasized, and I actually forgot about it while I was watching it. So great point there.
I think it's a record consecutive Grand Slam tiebreaks. He now has the record over Sampras or maybe he broke it
Yeah.
last tiebreak.
That sounds right. That would be one of those things that's like, I think he not only set a record, but I think he sort of created a record because in a way, I don't know if this was kind of like data tracked as extensively. Do you know what I mean? It's like, because Novak has been, yeah, I think it's been more, I don't know if it was tracked as often because guys like Sampras weren't doing as well in Paris. Some guys weren't playing Australia. You know what I mean? So here's Novak, Australia, Roland Garros, Wimbledon, tiebreaker, tiebreaker, tiebreaker.
His last loss in a major was Enzo Quacco. Quacco got him, so that's a big feather in the cap for the Frenchman. Yeah, and I think the overall record is 17 in a row. I think Roddick has it. I haven't verified that, but somebody in my Twitter replies said that, so I'll make that clear.
Does anyone actually put a feather in their cap? The Frenchman, I can see him putting a feather in his cap.
I don't know where that one comes from. Joel, it seems like something you might have knowledge of. No. Oh, okay.
Thank you. Just send me off to the liberal arts guy. Sure,
nobody knows. Nobody knows in that case. All right. Let's highlight a moment here. There's a hindrance call from Richard Haig, the chair umpire. Novak kind of brushes it off. Like he's able to move forward. There's no huge emotional reaction. And I think I would have been pretty ticked off. Look, Novak wasn't happy about it, but Amy, what did you think of like the mental response to that call? And if you also want to talk about the call, we can discuss that as well.
By the letter of the law, is it a hindrance? Yes, because if you back up the videotape and go frame by frame and all that, yeah, you could hear Novak's voice when the ball was on the other side of the court. Novak joked afterwards that it could have been something with the echo, and maybe it was. But the miscarriage of justice is that this is never called or rarely called. And, you know, as Ons Jabeur said about playing Sabalenka, she was grunting for both of us. I mean, the grunt was lasting so long. Was it ever called on Sabalenka? No. So it reminded me of the phantom foot fault call against Serena, which to this day, people go frame by frame on that and they still cannot find the foot fault. So if it's that close, what were you doing calling the foot fault in that situation? That's kind of how I feel about this. It's just not called. So why do you pick now to do it? That being said, as to your first question, he handled it brilliantly. He's going to ask for clarification. He's going to voice his opinion that he doesn't like it. And then he just goes to work and railroads his opponent.
And 2 points later, he gets a time violation in the same game. So it's a series of things. And he talked about afterwards in his press conference, he talked about how kind of maintain composure through that and whether that situation. I think the macro thing going on is chair umpires in the electronic line calling era are a little uncertain of what they're supposed to be doing and how they're supposed to be doing it. And there's we've seen a lot over the last couple of years, some uncertainty of chair umpires and challenges and how they go about conducting themselves in a way they're not as when they were supervising a whole crew of lines persons, there was something that they were like commanding an orchestra. Now they have all this AI, they have all this technology doing the work, and they're a little so their engagement in the match sometimes wavers because we've seen this at times, things that happen. It's like, whoa, what was that? Where'd that come from? You're giving this guy a hindrance, he's never had a hindrance in his life, and no, it's like at this stage and right, what was that?
Yeah, look, the thing is it is a judgment call. Like their hindrance is not, it's not like in or out, ball on the line, ball not, it's not like that. I think it was a bad judgment, but it is a judgment call. And you know, my thing is, look, when words are not uttered, right? When words are uttered, that's very distracting. But a delayed grunt, players are not put off by that, really. And I think if they were, you know, there are some players who do this regularly. Ferrer sometimes, Pablo Carreño Busta sometimes, Alcaraz sometimes, Sabalenka, Sarah Sorribes Tormo. Like a lot of players have a bit of a delay in their grunt because I think it comes at the end of their exhale, the end of their exertion. And you're right. I mean, it's not usually called. And look, it's not that distracting. Otherwise, players would complain. So, I'm not a fan of the call, but yeah, Novak did do a really good job of moving on. And then also, I thought one of the things he did mentally was just stay really engaged in that third set. And I kind of think he used the crowd kind of that were getting against him. I think he used that to keep him intense. Yeah, right? Because, like, here's the reality of that, Amy. It's like, was Sinner bringing the fight to him in that moment to the fullest extent? Like, was he actually making him worried and nervous? And not really, right? Like, 2 sets to love lead. That's the part of the match where you can fall into the trap of relaxing. I think those fans didn't let him relax because it was, oh, you think you're going to celebrate the third set? You're going to be crying at the end of this. Am I crazy, or am I reading that well, where, like, I think he's using the crowd there in his favor?
Yeah, and we've seen him do that a million times where, he needs to summon the will to continue playing these types of points and the motivation. And he finds a little something to help him along in summoning that motivation. And no, you're right. That's a great point. Sinner was not like really giving it to him at that very moment, but he knew how crucial it was, and that if he wanted to put the match away in straight sets, he needed to get himself going.
Well, look, and
Patented Novak.
He faced, 4-5, 15-30. Novak has an approach shot. He goes cross court to the center forehand and misses. So now he's down 2 set points. You're right. He had to find some energy, and that energy is such a interesting thing. Even for someone as evolved in all physical, mental ways as Novak, he was still doing the stuff that I know I do when somebody tells me that guy thinks you're terrible. It's like, just that extra, what is it? Is it 5%? Is it 7%? Whatever it is, that extra something that kind of locks one into a little bit more of that sensate mindset. And Novak then, okay, right. And even Novak, you think, again, someone as tremendous as him finds some other energy.
Yeah, I think he's in control of it. Like we saw in 2019 against Federer, he didn't do any of that because he didn't think it was the right call at that time, and he had to worry about Roger, and he did not need any extra. It was a completely different match, completely different situation. Right. So he didn't need it there. But I think in the third set, it made sense to me. It's like, oh yeah, this could help you because you need to stay intense. So I thought that was interesting.
He also needed it. He needed it in the reeling back way back in the 2011 U.S. Open semi that he won from 2 match points down. And that makes you think of it would be really interesting to talk with mega slam winners, Djokovic, Federer, Navratilova, Connors, McEnroe, about that whole engagement with the crowd, because that's really rare air. What's it like playing semis and finals of majors in front of people, and how when they, like Billie Jean King once said, they love you when you're young, they hate you when you're winning, and then they love you again when you're old. And so how does that all work? But how do you manage that in different places? We've seen like the French crowds, they have their energy, the Wimbledon have, I think that's that might be an intriguing explanation if you could get enough time, because Novak, he's really made kind of an art form of it.
Well, when are they gonna start really loving Novak again? Is he gonna have to be like 80 years old?
Loving him again? They'll love him. Well, 2 days from now. 2 days from now.
Okay.
I think there'll be a nice mix of both. I think that'll be a nice mix of happiness all around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The Wimbledon crowd, a little bit different from Paris and New York, because when a player's down 2 sets to love, the Wimbledon crowd is almost always going to just root for whoever's losing. Whereas in New York, it's kind of like, pick a side, F that guy, go that guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting thing too. That would be an interesting part of almost like the story with its chart of assets and liabilities of each of those 4 cities. The fairness aspect, the we love you aspect, the underdog, the national aspect, all that kind of stuff. And Novak's weathered all of these things through these stages of his career.
All right, with that, let's get to the final. It is a rematch of the Roland Garros semi, where Djokovic was able to come through after Alcaraz cramped at the start of the third set. But let's first talk about the surface. Let's talk about, clay to grass, how this matchup changes. Joel, do you think? Well, I'll ask you open-ended. How do you think this changes the matchup?
I think this helps Alcaraz more. I think the clay, the combination of the high stakes situation, the first Roland Garros semi versus Novak, and the grinding effort it takes to win points on clay, all contributed to kind of the Alcaraz, decline in that match. The physical, mental, the whole thing that cascaded in that match. I think grass is such a surface for opportunists, even now in its slower stage. And I think that'll help Alcaraz get in the flow of more points. I'm not saying that means he's going to win the match. I think, and the fact that he's faced this situation before now, it's a final instead of a semi, but it's still high stakes versus Novak. Probably more temperate weather conditions. I mean, even it's not going to feel like it's 94 degrees on the court. And clay, if it's hot, it feels even hotter when you're on clay. Grass, I think it's going to make for some really tremendous tennis.
Yeah, so this ties into the surface a little bit. I was looking at the ATP's metric for, they have figured out these algorithms for serve leaders and return leaders and under pressure. So it's not really a super scientific thing. They've just taken certain things and weighted them in certain ways. It's kind of a fun thing to look at. But on their return leaders, over the course of the past 52 weeks on all services, guess who the top 4 returners are?
I'm going to go Alcaraz number 1, because his break percentage is just through the roof. I'll say Djokovic 2, Medvedev 3, and 4 is a tough one. I could go, I don't know. I don't have a good guess on 4.
Plain as the nose. Yes, Sinner. It is. It's those 4.
Maybe weren't those your picks? Weren't those your pre-tournament picks to reach the semis?
Yeah, thank you for remembering that.
No, let's put it. Do you have a feather? You have a feather nearby?
Yeah, in my cap.
Okay, well done.
I don't even have a cap nearby. No, but I actually, Gill, I could be wrong about this because I glanced at it like 10 seconds before we started recording. I think actually Medvedev might be 2 right now. Again, this doesn't mean a whole lot, so nobody get, your knickers in a twist over this. But I think it does show you that Medvedev, despite the fact that he was adopting a return position which is ill-suited for grass, standing way back, he is a great returner, and Alcaraz was able to come through that pretty easily. Djokovic is going to be facing a better returner, even though Sinner is a very high quality returner. Alcaraz is even better, so that's interesting. Remember, I was keeping an eye on the second serve service speed of Novak, and it was in the 90s. For this match, I peeked at it at one point, it was 93. So again, he doesn't have to do more. And if he doesn't have to do more with it, why would he? But he may have to do more against Alcaraz.
On the second serve?
Yeah. Yeah, because we got a super great returner here. We got the number 1 returner by the ATP's metrics. So you might have to play around a little bit, a serve 90 miles, second serve 90 miles an hour. If that's not cutting it, and Novak is more than capable of upping it, as we've seen him do.
Well, that's actually been maybe the only crack that I've seen in Djokovic. I thought, first couple rounds at Wimbledon, he was trying to up the second serve speed, and then he came right back down pretty quickly. And I mean, against Sinner, it was probably the weakest part of his game. I thought second serve. Now, he did come up with a 118 second in the tiebreak
Yeah, I saw that.
Crucial service winner there. But I completely agree that Novak will have to do better in that area. But I do think the grass, I think there are 2 aspects to it for me. There's the court conditions, and then there's the, outside conditions, right? That have nothing to do with ball speed and bounce and stuff. I think the court conditions are going to help Novak do better in this matchup. When you increase the importance of serve, I think Djokovic has a better first serve than Alcaraz. You increase the importance of return. I think Novak returns better than Alcaraz, even though, God, Carlitos has been impressive in this tournament on the return. And I'm not talking about winning return points also, which the ATP metrics, Amy, that's the one downfall with them, is they can't interpret how much the return of serve itself has to do with it versus winning the return point. That's
True.
the weakness, right?
True.
But that bang tennis, quick points, and then also Djokovic's ability to rush Alcaraz, take his time away, hit big, stay offensive, all these things that Medvedev honestly just doesn't do, right? He doesn't take time away. He doesn't hit the ball hard. He doesn't stay offensive.
Well, that's why Medvedev Alcaraz is a terrible match.
Terrible matchup. I think Novak is a much tougher matchup for Alcaraz. What Novak does replicates a lot of the things that Jannik Sinner has done successfully to Carlos Alcaraz. Just hug the baseline, hit hard off both wings, like through the middle, rush that forehand. That's what makes Alcaraz uncomfortable.
You got to pin him, and you got to do certain things. I mean, he's a dynamic returner because he'll come in on returns. He'll look to control the court right away. Yeah, Medvedev is going to start 10 feet behind the court and get a foot behind the court. Alcaraz is going to start inside and come inside. He's going to do all this kind of time rushing. I think it's going to be a really, really fun match. I think it's going to be more fun tennis-wise than the French final, the French semi, the Roland Garros one.
The second set, if I can say, the second set was one of my favorite sets of the year.
No question. That was great. I don't know, I guess because I'm a fan of this kind of opportunistic, it's like I wrote this. I said, you either take the bounce or the bounce takes you. So you need to see, when you see that moment or that bounce comes, you better do something, because it might not come by again and someone else will take it. Whereas on clay, there's this more neutralizing thing that occurs. Okay, we'll be neutral and we'll go back to the toothpick by toothpick way. Whereas on grass, it's like, okay, and Alcaraz is a consummate opportunist. I mean, he's a contemporary version of a player. This is going to sound odd, a little bit like John McEnroe that way. Here's my chance. Go. I'm going. I'm pressing. I'm looking to press the action on you in some shape or form. Go on.
One of his favorite tools is the drop shot, and he was just feasting with it today because of Medvedev's court position. That will not be available to him in the same way that it was today.
No, you see, he also used that slice down the line backhand approach shot. Medvedev's forehand. Now, Novak is a better forehand than Medvedev, but still, I'm just the arsenal aspect of this match fascinates me. Grass. I mean, I've been kind of like maybe because I haven't been there in a few years watching it, Wimbledon on grass. I've kind of like reminding myself of what I so enjoy about grass court tennis and how much better it is now than it was as the court in the newer grass era. Longer rallies, all court play, and a guy like Alcaraz is showing another flourishing of it beyond what the big three were doing. Not beyond, but learned from what the big three did.
I want to just throw this out here. It's it's an Alcaraz question, not a Djokovic question. But in 2021, I was on a podcast, Alex Gruskin's podcast, talking about Alcaraz, and he was still kind of new. And because he was Spanish, a lot of people were like, oh, it's like a clay court guy. And I was trying to make the point, that's what, like 2021 Alcaraz discourse was like, oh, clay court guy. And I had actually watched him play, unlike the people saying this and stereotyping based on what country he's from. And I said, Alcaraz might win more Wimbledons than French Opens in his career. What are the chances? What are the chances of that in your opinion, Joel?
I love that. I love that kind of thinking. And I love the fact that some people I love the fact that, oh yeah, well, Gill here has actually seen the guy play. Right.
Yeah.
You guys are just making a thing based on where he has his passport. I mean, I hate that. I remember once when Lindsay Davenport came up, since she was from Palos Verdes, someone said, yeah, I should probably play a lot like that baseliner Tracy Austin. And while they had things in common, Lindsay had a whole other level of the serve and the whole aspect of her game. So I think it's pretty dangerous for anyone in the media to just think, oh, he was from Spain, therefore. I mean, wow. So yeah, I think that's very plausible that Alcaraz can end up winning more Roland Garros, particularly since we know Nadal's going to win another 10. It's going to take it up. Nadal's going to win 10 more Roland Garros titles, and he's going to hold that position.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I was trying to make a point back then, so I don't know if I would say it right now, honestly. But what about mentally, handling the moment, right? I mean, we know how mental that last meeting between Djokovic and Alcaraz was last time. Amy, how is it different this time?
He's already brought up the cramps in the post-match interview, saying, "I'm not going to cramp again." Essentially, if that's what, if that's what. So I don't know that Alcaraz played a poor mental match against Djokovic in the French Open. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever been in that situation where you cramp badly. It really doesn't have to do with the mind. It's not like you can set your mind right and stop it.
Wait. He was playing for 2 hours. Why do you think I think he definitely cramped because of the tension and the pressure.
Right. He said that.
But that Dr. Gross and Dr. Drucker, it really is like a medical or physiological phenomenon. So I don't know that you two can proclaim that. There are other things related to salt, potassium, things like that within the body. So, I mean, I know when I've cramped yes, the couple times that I've cramped, it's been intense situations. But it was also extremely hot, and I was borderline dehydrated, even though I was drinking like a fish. So, I don't think it was the tennis that he was engaged and healthy and able to play. I thought he played mentally very strong. So I think Alcaraz is in a really good mindset right now. This is going to be a tough one for Novak.
Oh, it will be a tough one, I think, because of the style. And I think Novak's effort in Paris was very impressive how he did that. But I don't know. I think Carlos has admitted that prior to that match, I mean, he was kind of like spiking high. I don't know what he was sleeping like the night before. A lot of things go into it, but you're right. I'm not a doctor. One thing I did want to clarify when I was talking about that comparison, Lindsay Davenport is 9 inches taller than Tracy Austin. So I just remember talking to this person who said, yeah, she's probably going to play just like Tracy Austin, and they hadn't even seen her play. So that's my point about our colleagues Gill thought, haven't even seen Alcaraz and assume this thing about Alcaraz. And Alcaraz, he loves Federer. He's a whole different cat than some of the classic Spanish clay quarters. So yeah, I don't know. I guess we should do a little more research on this cramping.
Well, I have done actually a lot. I did a piece on Holger Rune for Baseline Media, and the fact is the science around cramping is unbelievably inconclusive because it's very hard to trigger it in a lab setting. And in order to do experiments and make scientific conclusions on something like this, you have to know how to trigger it so that you can control variables and such.
Oh, I see. You have to kind of. Oh, God.
Right. I mean, that's the only way to study something is to trigger something, and then you can study it. So cramping science is a mess. And that's why sometimes
to my point, right?
I know, but we have experiential, and we won't get bogged down on this, but we're going to have to agree to disagree, because experientially, numerous, pro upon pro has said that it's the nerves that trigger the cramping.
That's
right?
anecdotal. You mean
anecdotal,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't accept that because I have a scientific method type mind. And I just think it's more complicated than that. Because if cramping equals nerves, then, and that's all there is to it. There's nothing to do with salt, water, potassium.
Not always. Sometimes dehydration, sometimes overexertion, but also sometimes nerves.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a component. We shouldn't proclaim, like, even Carlos, I don't know if he should proclaim like the reason I cramped was nerves. You know what I mean?
No, but he knew also, oh yeah, and by the way, Novak, on an 87-degree
Yeah.
day, extracting from. I don't think, for example,
Yes.
I don't think there are a great many tennis players who that Alcaraz might not have cramped against. That said, on the cramping part, you guys, Gill, you lived on the East Coast for much of your life. Amy, you're there. I've cramped once in my life, and it happened in Texas. So there you go. California, not as much humidity, not as many situations. I've only cramped once. So
Yeah.
I know. You guys, I don't know, how many times have you cramped, Amy?
Twice, two big ones that I can think of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr.
Yeah.
Gross.
They were both on super hot days, like 95 degrees plus.
Me about the same, but usually after I'm done playing, actually, not during. Playing it forward though, I think even beyond the cramping, like even the way Alcaraz played the first set against Djokovic in Paris, I thought he was freaking out. I thought his nerves were awful. And I actually think against Holger Rune in the quarterfinal at this Wimbledon, his nerves were awful. And I think if Holger played a better level, he would have won that match. So I actually think right now, it's number one on my list of concerns with Alcaraz is just dealing with tension and just playing his best with tension. That said, I think he'll be more relaxed this time than he was last time because there hasn't been this 1 year buildup to this match. And yes, it's a Wimbledon final, but Alcaraz is an underdog instead of the favorite. And I whatever you may think about Alcaraz's status as the favorite at Roland Garros, the fact is, that's what the odds were. And I think that's a lot of the narrative was that he could win at the very least. And here it's kind of Djokovic's house, Wimbledon. I think he can have more of an underdog mentality. And he also knows to learn from his mistakes. And I think it's getting together with his team, which is what he talked about after Paris. And it's like, we are going to make sure that this doesn't happen again. So we are going to use strategies to stay calm. And I think that's what Alcaraz is going to do. Strategies to stay calm. And I don't think physicality is going to affect this match whatsoever.
Agreed. I agree. And then of course, and then there are things like diet and whether it's meditation or rituals or meals or energy management. A player told me once, a guy would play it. He said, early in your career, it's like you're still being like a junior. You're just playing tennis matches. And then as the years go on, you learn all these different things about time management and energy management, and even things like scheduling tournaments to play in. I mean, look what happened. Look what we saw happen to Dominic Thiem. The overbooking of scheduling, and you learn all these different things about the care and managing of a pro career and how you take care of yourself to get yourself that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, taking us back in the Wayback Machine to our last podcast, Gill, I remember you bringing up, like Djokovic's injuries might be the only thing that could hold him back from winning this, possibly. He's stayed very healthy, knock wood. And I thought really the only thing standing in his way would be Alcaraz. And that's how it's shaped up to be. And by the way, I think Alcaraz still stands in his way. So this could be an epic.
Yeah,
I hope it is. I hope it is. I hope, because I think it'd be just, the last two Wimbledon finals, Novak won. He played some formidable opponents, grabbed the first set, Kyrgios and Berrettini, but Alcaraz is cut of a whole different cloth. So that's really to see. And he's already won a major. So that's neat too.
Yeah, I'm glad we got this as the final. And we also talked about Alcaraz's terrible draw. And to me, Nicolas Jarry played incredible. Like if Alcaraz was off on that day, he would have lost. And then Berrettini, I think a little bit off his game, but still, like he ended up playing some really great opponents and finding his way through anyway. And Hurkacz had this insane serving day against Djokovic. So both of them have been so impressive. Straight set semifinals. I mean, man.
I'll tell you what I like about about all those matches you cited. This is the thing I enjoy about Wimbledon so much. These matches tilt on a knife's edge in a way they don't on any other surface because of the whole nature of grass and this. That's why the attentiveness at Wimbledon, a break point, a set point, because these points can fly by. and you don't get them. Yeah, it's very exciting.
Yeah. Can we do a quick exercise, and then we'll sign off? Let's do for each player. So, what's the area where Djokovic has the largest advantage over over Alcaraz? And then we'll do the other way. Area where Alcaraz has the biggest advantage over Djokovic. I'll start Djokovic over Medvedev. For me, it's still nerve management. It's mental. It's executing under pressure. Now, I could see a world in which maybe it doesn't play out that way because Novak has, favorite status and going for the Grand Slam. But still, out of everything, I would say it's the mental area where Djokovic has the biggest advantage over Alcaraz. Amy, what about you?
I would say I've seen enough. You make really good points, and yeah, I would maybe little agree with you. But I would say actually, for Djokovic, it's the serve because of how well he's been serving, particularly first serve. And then are we doing what Alcaraz?
No, just okay. Djokovic. Yeah,
got it.
Joel,
I'm going experience. I mean, this is record 35th Grand Slam final. This is Alcaraz's second and his first on the court of courts. And I've talked to enough people and been around it myself. And so you walk onto that center court, it's a whole other thing than the other three majors, than Davis Cup, than anything else walking onto that court for the first time. And Carlos is as well prepared for it as you could imagine a 20-year-old could be. But still, that court, that thing, and that experience aspect, I think that's Novak's X factor difference.
Okay, I think so. Mental, serve, experience, all very good choices. Now let's go the other way. Alcaraz for Djokovic. Alcaraz over Djokovic, and Amy, we'll start with you.
The forehand, baby. That I saw him hit just balls that had no business being hit that hard and stay in the court over 100 miles an hour. Any opening that you give him, even if you don't think you're giving him an opening, he can crush it at any time.
I'm going to go with the innovation index, the whole eclecticism of Alcaraz's game. This way he's using the forehand, of course, is the primary, but a whole bunch of things. It's just like he's the young one, he's the new one, and we know what Novak's pretty much going to bring to this match tactically. We might see some wrinkles, but we know as well we should. We've seen this guy playing for more than 15 years. Alcaraz, first Wimbledon final, he's going to trot out a lot of things. And it's not just the kitchen sink, it's more like the dining room table.
I think I thought about going forehand. Let's go net rushing. I think Djokovic is so good in the retrieval aspect of things. What Alcaraz will do is he'll put the ball away. He'll just come forward and put the ball away. So he really takes away defense in a big way with how he attacks the net with his speed. All right. Well, it's a final
I want to add something to this. As you mentioned that, I want to just pose this briefly. Might we say that, save for the days when Federer was beating Novak a good amount of the time, is this the best volley guy Novak has played in a high stakes match? I mean, I'm not talking about one off against in a semi.
What about Nadal?
I'm not talking about Nadal's skill at the net and his prowess at the net, because that's still not a primary aspect of the Nadal game. I'm looking at Alcaraz as a net rusher kind of guy. I'm not saying he's Stefan Edberg or Patrick Rafter. Okay, Nadal, but I don't think of Nadal's volleying as having carried the day for him versus Novak in their matches. It's made some things, but it hasn't been the primary.
But it was always there. It has always been there on break point.
Okay.
It's
all right. Then maybe. I'm
spitballing with you.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I put Nadal, but anyway, okay, but not many other than two fellow three members. And here's a young guy who does it in his own way, different than Federer and Nadal.
Yeah, I think Alcaraz is definitely a more significant net rusher than Nadal and Murray, no doubt. Even though Nadal's volleys are amazing, if you're not going up as much, I think that's, that just makes it a lesser part of your game. Kyrgios last year, last year's Wimbledon final, he did have to contend with somebody who was going to come forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a one-off. That was just one match. But you make a good point, Joel. This will not be a Craig O'Shaughnessy example of somebody who decided to play Djokovic from the baseline. Right? Should be great. It'll be explosive, fireworks. Whole world will be watching. We will be talking about it after it ends, which will also be exciting. That'll do it for this episode of 3. Remember, we're available on all podcast platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe, and leave a review on Apple and Spotify. We will see you next time on the next episode of 3.